So in terms of energy efficiency, we've done a lot of work with myself and graduate students trying to quantify what are the different energy components of agriculture, mostly within the farm gate, what's happening on the farm, but also all the inputs to agriculture, which some of which are very energy intensive. And then also, what can we do with the resources on the farm in order to produce energy, both for farm use, but also for the broader society?
I want to read a line from the study. It says agriculture's greatest energy demand comes from fuel, fertilizer, and irrigation systems. As a farmer is thinking about their farm, what would you tell them to focus on to reduce energy use in those areas from a basic to a more advanced approach?
Sure. Well, the I'll start with fuel. So that's an expensive part of any farm operation. And for crop farming, it's primarily liquid fuels. So we're talking diesel, sometimes gasoline, and many farmers are now using biodiesel, which is a farm product. Of course, it's mostly processed off farm, but some farmers make their own biodiesel products. And increasingly, we also have renewable diesel, which is a slightly different chemical processing and is even more compatible with diesel equipment. For gasoline, of course, ethanol is another substitute that can be done and produced from farm resources. And so both of those are really good opportunities for farms to actually use some of their own resources in their energy uses. In some cases now, we also have natural gas tractors, and I'll talk more about renewable natural gas, but that's another opportunity to use farm resources. The biogas that's produced on farms from anaerobic digestion can be burned, but the tractors are requiring typically a higher quality gas than that. So it needs to be upgraded to the quality that's adequate to get the power for those kinds of equipment needs. Now that's the fuel side. But the equipment operations actually, there's a lot of choices that farmers make in terms of what their tillage systems are, what their planting systems are. Reduced tillage, which has many environmental benefits and soil health benefits, is a way to reduce the energy requirements from tillage. So there's a conservation program and an energy efficiency component to that. The next, well, I'll switch gears a little bit from the crops. So the rest of farm operations, and particularly livestock operations, there's oftentimes a lot of electricity involved. So that's another area where farms can think about their fuel source. Renewable natural gas and biogas can be used to produce electricity. Biogas on farms is an opportunity that many dairies have taken advantage of. But there's also solar and wind. And agrivoltaics is getting a lot of interest now in terms of how do we actually find compatible ways to produce solar, not just on the roofs of barns, for example, but also in fields and doing that in compatible ways with cropping systems. There are some challenges there which we could get into, but that's another opportunity. In terms of fertilizer. Now, this is really interesting. When we look at the various crops that we grow in the U.S., it turns out that the energy that's embedded in fertilizer that's used to produce that fertilizer off the farm is actually the single biggest component of the energy required to produce that crop. It's greater than the fuel in almost all cases. And so that's kind of a surprise to a lot of people, but it turns out that that's really the main cost of fertilizer. Our nitrogen fertilizer is made from nitrogen in the air that we breathe in big industrial factories with a lot of fossil fuel, and it's a very energy intensive process. That's particularly the case for nitrogen fertilizer, but there's also a lot of equipment used in the phosphorus fertilizers we use, so there's an opportunity there to be more efficient about our use of fertilizer. Again, that has a host of environmental benefits, including water quality and economic benefits. So learning how to be more effective in getting the maximum crop growth from the fertilizer we have, also looking at trying to reclaim nutrients on the farm, more effective use of manure nutrients, for example, so that we can reduce the on-farm or the off-farm fertilizer inputs. Those are all ways to enhance the energy use in fertilizer.